Percy asked. I'm fine, thanks, Thomas replied.
It doesn't sound like it,
said Toby. I'm all right, really, Thomas insisted. I'm just a bit nervous about the fog. Trying to be careful, you know. Percy and Toby didn't persist and fell asleep instead. Thomas stayed awake, however. He was scared and continued eyeing his surroundings, trying to make sure the specter wouldn't appear again. He was exhausted the next day as he puffed into Elsbridge. He was eyeing the station in a nearby yard and trying to stay awake. He would jolt himself awake every time he began to nod off, but he wasn't able to keep it up for long.
Wake up, Thomas.
James whistled. Thomas woke with a start.
You were supposed to be off 5 minutes ago.
The red engine said. Oh dear, I'd better get going, cried Thomas as he shot out of the station. Despite him going as fast as he could, he was late at every stop, and the passengers were not happy. Neither was the Fat Controller when he heard the news.
I've heard complaints aplenty from the passengers about you being late all day because you weren't getting enough sleep. It is very important that you get sleep every night,
the Fat Controller said that evening.
Now I expect you to rest up tonight.
I'm sorry, sir, but I can't, said Thomas. The Fat Controller stared.
And why ever not?
He asked sternly. Because something tried to attack me the other night, Thomas replied.
What sort of something?
Asked the Fat Controller. I couldn't see it fully due to the fog, but I could just make out the smoke box and... Thomas shivered. All I could see on the front of the smoke box were two tiny white dots where the eyes would have been.
You must have had a nightmare,
Percy put in.
You got scared of my story and your imagination went wild.
It was not my imagination, Thomas protested. I was awake when I saw that thing in the fog, but I couldn't move, speak, or even whistle for help. That godforsaken thing nearly got me, he cried. The Fat Controller listened.
I see now what it is you experienced,
he said after Thomas had finished.
What you went through that night was called sleep paralysis. It is when you're only partially awake, as in you can open your eyes and see, but the rest of your body isn't fully awake yet, meaning you can't use those parts of you,
he explained. How does that explain the thing I saw? Thomas asked.
During these nights' sleep paralysis episodes, you can go into a state of panic because of your inability to use anything other than your eyes,
the Fat Controller continued,
which causes you to see horrifying things that aren't there. The ant engine that you saw was one of those hallucinations.
So that thing was just my imagination, Thomas said.
Exactly,
the Fat Controller replied.
And it's not only with you. Sleep paralysis can happen to anyone.
That's a relief, Thomas said.
Now that that's cleared up, I expect you won't have any more problems,
the Fat Controller asked. No, sir, I won't, answered Thomas.
That's a good engine,
said the Fat Controller.
And if you have another experience with sleep paralysis, just keep calm and keep your eyes closed, and it'll pass,
he added before turning and walking away. Thomas slept peacefully at night and was punctual with his passenger run the next day. Thankfully, he never had another experience of sleep paralysis again after that night.